There we go. We're in. Right, Elliot, shall we kick off?
Let's do it.
Perfect. Hi everybody. Welcome to an exclusive interview with an up-and-coming RWA real estate project. My name is Michael. I'm a council. I'm a council member at the AirDAO EVM compatible layer one business. We're governed by our community, and as an ecosystem, our aim is to provide easy-to-use, mobile-friendly Web3 products, and our goal is to bridge the gap between complex financial protocols and a lack of knowledge from Web2 users within emerging markets. Today, I'll be having a discussion with Elliot, one of the founders and CEO of Modus, and also an AirDAO ecosystem builder. Elliot, just for everybody who will be viewing, tell us a little bit about yourself and perhaps a high-level overview of the Modus ecosystem.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, thanks for that. And hello, everyone. As Michael mentioned, my name's Elliot. I'm a co-founder here at Modus and CEO at Modus. I'll start with a little bit about myself and my background. And then, as Michael, as you touched upon, we'll go through sort of a high-level run through of what we do at Modus. So I suppose right at the beginning, my career started in structured products. I worked out in the banking industry in Zurich, looking at different fund structures, different investment styles and fund pricing mechanisms, all for investors to increase transparency and build up their product suite. I then moved on. That was around 2016. I moved on, came back to London, which is where I'm based. And in essence, at that time, I worked across multiple consultancy projects, but I dabbled in the crypto world. Super interested in the space of RWA and in the transparency that DeFi projects can bring. Fast forward to a couple of years, one of the co-founders of the project now, there are three of us, Mr. Yves Leblanc and another chap called George Henderson. Fast forward a couple of years, George approached me. At the time, he's working quite closely with a property development fund based in London. And in essence, what he spotted was, I suppose you could think of it as the basis of the opportunity that Modus has seized. There's a massive housing crisis, if you will, especially across the UK from a development standpoint. Developers have found themselves undercapitalized. There are archaic routes to money, to equity, and oftentimes it's too expensive for them to access, and it's too slow for them to access. So we saw that opportunity, if you will. And at the same time, with the crypto background that I spoke about, we also saw that there was a massive growing need and want, a desire for guys in the crypto space to be able to use their crypto assets to access real world assets, something that's tangible, something they could see with their own eyes and build real world value creation. And we kind of coupled these ideas together and came up with what is a decentralized application, which, as Michael have inferred, built on AirDAO. And our aim really is to fractionalize access to this real estate development market, allowing everyone to invest with their crypto assets, in theory, from as little as 100 USDC, although a lot of our investors are quite keen on putting in a bit more.
I mean, it's interesting though, isn't it? Because we see projects pop up every day of the week in the crypto markets, but naturally, this is something I would assume that has taken you guys a lot of time. I mean, you and I have been in discussions and working together for the last couple of years, but how long have you guys been working on this concept?
That's a good question. I suppose from the origins of Modus, it must be over 3 years now. But as you mentioned, it was something that right when we started, we were very keen, especially myself, because I saw a lot of projects raising off of white papers, right? And we're in that, I suppose, golden era of crypto assets, where you get a lot of exciting projects and, they put themselves out there and people are super keen on. So you've got the sort of crypto degens and all the other players in the space. They're super keen on these exciting projects. And then what ends up happening is guys do a little bit of groundwork, especially after they raise off of white paper and they realize actually it's probably a lot harder than what I foresaw. And actually maybe the infrastructure is not there. So for us, what we were really keen on right at the beginning of Modus was doing it right the first time. and making sure we carry that ethos throughout the whole project. So as I mentioned, we've been around, I would say, just over 3 years, and I would even say that the first year and a half of our time on Modus was predominantly spent around the legal framework that we have in place now. You know, coupling crypto assets with anything in the real world is always tricky from a legal standpoint. It's especially tricky when you're coupling the real estate industry and the development real estate industry with crypto assets.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, the property market's still very much archaic. We don't see we don't see a huge amount of change coming forward, and actually, in order to be able to invest in that space, even if you're just a residential home buyer, it can still be super difficult. So AirDAO invested in you guys back in 2023. That was after actually you did a huge amount of the work with the platform, with your legal structure, with your branding, and lots of other great stuff. So since you've received that investment, what have you guys been up to?
Yeah, so as I said, we did a lot of the groundwork initially, and then when Michael, as you mentioned, we've kind of been in talks for a couple of years, but when we basically realized that investment towards the end of last year, our main focus was to get our platform operational, efficient, and as, let's say, on-rampable as possible for traditional investors. So a lot of what we've been doing is trying to educate the market, make sure the UX on our platform is as smooth as possible, and build out our development. So we've got exciting technological developments on our platform. We're introducing an early liquidation function, hopefully towards the back end of this year, and a few other bits there. But mainly it was to really rekindle our connection with developers across the UK. So make sure we've got a pipeline in place, and we're ready to push forward. Where we are now, we've got quite an exciting project. We've been in discussions with, as I mentioned, quite a few developers for a long time now, but we've earmarked our first project, which we call the Saab Residences. It's an exciting development, 9 units with underground parking in Leatherhead, which is just outside London. Great commuter belt, super saleable, and we've successfully managed to strike up an agreement with our developer there, which is exciting, and that will be the first project that is on our platform, and that's coming in the next couple of weeks now.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I mean, the reality is that one of the core components of the AirDAO ecosystem is that we want to make, you know, life easy for investors. When they on board, it's easy to use, it's accessible wherever they are in the world, and I think you guys synergize with that belief really well. And naturally, because of the complexity of the products that you're offering, there's always going to be those few extra steps around KYC. But so just remind me, it's like in under 5 minutes, I think people come on board into
Yeah, under 6 clicks is what we always say. So we worked pretty tirelessly to integrate everything onto our platform. You know, from a personal standpoint, I understand KYC isn't for everyone. Just going back to it, I think from our start, especially being in the RWA space we're in, you know, we view the crypto market obviously as not going anywhere, which saying that 7 years ago was quite a controversial thing to say. Now I think everyone's agreed it's here to stay. But with that comes maturity, right? You know, and people are looking at the various uses of their crypto. How do I stake this in different projects, and what will my return be? So it's no longer just buying a token or buying a coin and hoping it goes up. And of course, there's still that. You know, I suppose that's the same with the stock market even. But you know, it's in this space, it's the usability and how do I really see the value that crypto can bring in general. So we saw that and we thought we need to do this properly. And with doing it properly, as I say, comes KYC, comes AML checks. But really our focus was to integrate everything onto our platform, use third parties that are reliable and well known. So, you know, we use Crystal for our AML check, and we use SumSub, sorry, for our KYC. And it was really making sure that we're compliant with any regulatory body that's out there, whilst also giving users a really easy and I suppose safe fill in terms of their data, right? We don't store your data ourselves, stored by a third party, and it's never really accessed from us unless we have to check with any regulatory bodies.
Yeah, I think that makes complete sense. I mean, ultimately, I don't know about you, but growing up, it was always, property was always something that both myself and many people that I knew wanted to be involved in, but it always felt out of reach. And I suppose the difference here is it's not just out of reach for those that live in the UK, but it's even more out of reach for those that live outside of the UK to invest into the UK property market. And you guys bring down those walls
Yeah, I
quite
mean,
quite easily, actually.
yeah, so that's something right from the start, as I said. So it's, we saw a market there of guys that it wasn't just from a development standpoint, the guys that just couldn't get on the housing ladder full stop, right? Guys who couldn't buy their own homes. You could borrow, at least in the UK, you could borrow up to 4 times your salary, right? And that's the max after the '08 crash that any lender will give you. You're looking at house prices, even in Greater London, that are, around 300, 400,000. And guys aren't earning the £100,000 a year to be able to buy their first home, especially younger guys in the younger sort of Gen Z generation, or even the younger millennials. There's a massive, massive problem, if you will, to just get on the housing ladder. And then when you take that a step further and you realize that there's all this demand for house building, for home builders, and they lack the funding, we kind of coupled those together and thought there's a great opportunity here that, by the power of a collective, we're able to enhance the experience, fine, with a platform, but allow everyone to benefit from that value creation. And just touching on that KYC point, for us, it's all about making everything as smooth as possible, but also making it as reliable as possible, right? Crypto and the blockchain space gets a bit of a bad rap, right? Because a lot of people want to, let's say, play in these sort of opaque arenas whereby, you might stake your funds in a protocol that will work for the first year and you get a great return, and you don't really know what they're doing with it. And then year 2 comes around and no one's accountable. Everything's fine if you're making money, right? But when people don't make money, that's when you want someone to point a finger at. And that's when you need these checks and you need accountability. And that's something that we had. It was a dichotomy. We wanted something that people feel safe, people don't have to disclose as much information that they don't feel comfortable with. But at the same time, it provides that level of assuredness that we think we've managed to crack now.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because what you're referring to there is sometimes those second year crashes can align with a bear market.
Yeah.
And I suppose the beauty of real world assets is that specifically if it's not tied or pegged to the value of another cryptocurrency, it does mean that you're in a unique position to capitalize on both the bull and the bear market.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that point, being in development itself, it gives us quite a unique opportunity in terms of the value creation and therefore the buffer that Modus members and AirDAO, the AirDAO ecosystem get by investing in these assets. Because what you end up finding is when you partner, let's say, with a developer, they're building their value creation from a plot of land right through to sale. And a lot of these traditional equity funds or development funds, Michael, I know you know a bit about this from your background. A lot of these guys work with quite clunky, as you mentioned, archaic structures. For example, instead of using smart contracts, they may have solicitors hold funds in escrow. Quite expensive processes that take a hell of a lot longer and cost a lot more money. And what that ends up meaning is if you ever have a flux in, say, the house price index, so I mentioned right at the beginning of the call that after 2008, when I touched upon why lenders weren't lending more money, but obviously we had the big housing crash, the subprime mortgage crash. When you start to have a dip in property prices, that does happen. There's no asset class that can avoid that. What you tend to find is big clunky institutions that have 10 land sources and 20 business development reps and offices and all the expenses, the classic OPEX you have. The first guys that are hit are the investors, because they're the guys where their returns start to shrink, and if things go really badly, their money goes, their original principal investment goes. What we've done is we've used a platform that is scalable, super efficient, can transact at high volume, so our costs are a lot lower, which means in effect, any flux that you've seen, I mean, I say any flux, if you literally look at the history of real estate in the UK, if you take any drop in the house price index, so that being 2008, or if people read up on their history, the Great Depression in the 1930s, 20s and 30s, even if you take, you know, the most extreme cases of that, the investors through Modus, their principals never touch. And oftentimes, depends on the figures you look at, even the returns aren't touched. Because we've just completely eliminated all of those middlemen, if you will, and those clunky expenses that in effect provides a buffer for investors. So it's quite a resilient way. I mean, property is resilient as it is, as an asset class. This is quite a resilient way to safeguard investors' returns. And also you have the added benefit that it provides a bit of diversification from, as you mentioned, you know, other investments in the crypto space. You know, with us, you stake through our platform and you end up with direct exposure to real assets whilst you have it in your crypto form, right? So you never have to leave the Web3 space, but at the same time, you're not restricted to certain funding protocols that, you know, are all linked.
So one of the things that you've mentioned quite a lot is your positioning in the UK market. So that's naturally going to be one of your USPs. And I assume that the reason you're focusing on the UK market is one, because the experience and background of Modus is very much in the UK. But the second point you've also touched upon is the strength of the UK property market vis some other areas globally. But just thinking about Modus and your USPs as a business, I mean, naturally, you're not the only RWA project around, and you're also not the only real estate RWA project around. So what's the real differences? What are the USPs that really set you apart?
So, I mean, you touched on it there. So I would say our standout difference is the fact that we focus in development. So that value creation means that we can scale with quite a broad, well, quite a large breadth of developers across the UK. But we can give you access to that whole value creation, whereas a lot of other real estate, so RWA, but real estate projects, give you access to, say, fractional ownership in something like a timeshare, which has been done before, right? So you stake certain value in something that's already been built, and your returns come from a rental yield, right? Oftentimes, those rental yields are the first to be hit when things start to get shaky, and they're not as lucrative. You know, often I can say from experience in the UK and London more specifically, you know, you'd be hard pressed to find anything above a 5% yield from rentals, and anything above that, it starts to look a little bit fishy, and not very sustainable. Whereas when you deal with development, because you're buying a plot of land, as I say, and you have that whole value creation, you can start to offer quite high returns, you know, we offer up to 15%. So I would say that's definitely something that sets us apart. And with that is the legal framework that you have to undergo. Touched upon, we spent a year and a half, I would say, you know, quite in-depth legal analysis and legal work to be able to allow us to structure our investments in a way that is compliant to be able to do this. To my mind, I can't think of any other projects based in the UK that do that. I know there are a few who are exploring that now globally, but I'd say that's definitely a massive USP of ours. I would also say the fact that, again, as you touched upon, we're in London. So what you find with a product like ours, you've got to know your market extremely well from a regulatory standpoint, but also from the asset itself. You know, every country has different benefits. You know, if you go to, as I mentioned, Florida, for example, in the States, right? You know, their main economy is driven by rental yields. So you've got to know your area. And I suppose for us, because naturally we're all based in the UK and we've worked with development funds before, this is our patch, if you will. And it's not just our patch, it's a patch that is worth mentioning is attracted to everyone really around the world. So, I mean, again, Michael, I know you know, but for a lot of people who aren't aware, I think most people should be or are aware, the UK is a hub for FDI, for foreign direct investment, right? So no matter where you are, anyone who makes money abroad always looks to store it in, you know, certain well-known capital cities and places that they view as stable. for growth and sizable returns. And London itself in the UK more generally stands out as one of those places. So I would say compared to projects, be them in Dubai or be them, in the Far East, to be able to be in London, give access to properties, developments in London, the level of returns we do and it being the nature of what it is, being such a stable economy, I think that's definitely a value.
Yeah, I mean, naturally, obviously, I'm from the UK. I live in the UK. Because we're such a mature country, actually, the land values that we have here are crazy,
Yeah.
and the demand for housing, as you say, is super high. So it's not like you're going to build something, you're going to sell it, and then next week there's another development that looks exactly the same that's going up next door, because those opportunities just aren't there. I think the days of those style of developments, like mass developments, are long gone. From back in
100%.
the factory days.
Yeah, and on that point, we were quite keen when we started to delegate expertise to the guys that know best, right? There's no such thing in our minds, or there's no real successful model of a jack of all trades, if you will. So when we work with developers, we make sure we've got a massive network of guys who know their area, right? So the UK is a relatively large place. We make sure the developers we work with are experts in their proposed projects in their field. So, we allow them to come to us and go, I've been building in this area for 25 years. I have my ear to the ground. Whenever a fresh site that's got great potential comes up, I'm the first to know about it. My problem is I don't have the capital to hand to be able to go and execute on that. And that's where we step in. So that's not to say we don't do our own DD. Of course, we do our own DD. It's also worth mentioning all of the projects on the platform also have senior debt with them. So in essence, what that means is you've had a bank, right, or a senior lender who have actually put their own cash into a development alongside your cash, and they've done their DD, right? I mean, there's this old adage in the UK that when it's sunny, the bank gives you an umbrella to shield you from the sun, and when it's raining, it often takes it away, right? But in essence, what that means is banks never really tend to lose. And if you can invest alongside a bank, you have that assuredness that, not only are you going to do your DD in the area, we give you all the information to do that. You can see the CGIs, you can see the appraisals, the valuations, the location, all of that. But at least you've also got, a large institution that have gone through a credit committee and they've also vetted it as well, as well as the developer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we could talk about this stuff for days. So I mean, we're recording this on the 5th of April. The reason we thought it would be great to do this interview is because you guys are nearing a significant milestone. It's something that we're really excited about, the AirDAO team, because we know just what this can do for our ecosystem and the wider industry. So tell us a little bit more about the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, we've got our first project that we're listing on the platform over the next couple of weeks. It's a project that I would say is perfectly suited to where we are right now. It's a shorter development term. It's already had, I would say, it's over 70% developed already. So, if there is any risk in development, it will be, we always say it's the ABCs. It's the acquiring risk, it's the building risk, and then it's the end selling risk. And with this, you've already gone past that acquisition stage, you're 75% built, and that risk starts to go down. And it's ended up 2 of the units are already retained, and the others are looking to be sold already off plan. So it's almost a perfect development project, and it's come about at a good time. That development term is around 4 months as it stands, and that will be the first project to be listed onto the platform. So over the next couple of weeks, we're about to unveil a new reward tier structure exclusively for the AirDAO ecosystem, and therefore early Modus adopters and members. And that's really to incentivize them for being there, we're part of your ecosystem, and there's that symbiotic relationship. So therefore it makes sense that, you guys get more rewards, I suppose, than anyone would. You will be our early adopters. So we're unveiling that today, which is quite exciting. And yeah, over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be opening up our investment book, or I should say, the developer's investment book, access to that investment exclusively to the AirDAO community and the AirDAO ecosystem. So it's an exciting time. And yeah, it's what we've all been working towards for a very long time. And I think we're all kind of happy to say we're on track with it and all super excited.
So I don't want to speak for you, but just to kind of build on what you said around, the first property, any sensible individual would say, well, if it's completed or it's nearly completed, why raise investment? And the simple answer is that, of course, for the Modus ecosystem, this is about giving people the opportunity to be part of this ecosystem without necessarily having to have a long period of time where their capital is being utilized elsewhere. So that's one of the reasons why it was perfect for the platform itself. But secondly, because as we said, the platform is built for undercapitalized developers, and this is absolutely one of them. So by bringing this onto the platform, that developer then has the opportunity to then go and seek new opportunities, which, correct me if I'm wrong, those opportunities will also find their way to the Modus platform in the future.
Yeah, correct. So what in essence happens is the developer has already put some equity into the project themselves, alongside, as I mentioned, senior debt. And in essence, what the Modus members will be doing is they will be purchasing out that developer from his equity position. Now, as you mentioned, why would a developer in their right mind do that when they're, 4 or 5 months away from a project being completed, 2 units are retained? They may as well stay in and reap, I suppose, the full rewards, right? As opposed to passing off some of that return to other investors. Well, the real value for them is by being bought out now, it gives them extra liquidity now to go and seize other opportunities in front of them. So a developer now, if he were to wait 4 or 5 months, he'll miss an opportunity that's being presented to him right now that he knows fits into what he designs and develops, and therefore he's missed a money opportunity. So for them, it's really a matter of being able to turn my deal flow, if you will, as fast as possible. So he benefits from using your capital, whilst you benefit as well from that development project. And as you mentioned, yeah, the developer we're using now in particular has 2 more projects on the horizon that he's ready to rock and roll with as soon as possible. We do thorough DD, right? So they're undergoing DD now. We make sure that, senior lender gets involved first, that goes through credit committee. But as soon as Leatherhead is on the platform and Modus members are able to fund his portion of that development, he's agreed also to put other developments on the platform as well.
Great. So looking forward into 2024, one of the things that we haven't touched upon is a token, the Modus token. And this is some of the confusion that I've seen in the AirDAO ecosystem over the last couple of months when we've been talking about Modus. And there is a clear distinction between investing in the properties, which is USDC. You invest USDC and you will receive a return up to 15 or 20% of what you've invested. But then alongside that, we're going to have the bonus token, which is a utility token for the Modus ecosystem. So do you want to just tell us a little bit about, what that token is and when we can expect that to land?
Yeah, so it's important to draw that distinction, and it's something that, again, you've mentioned with the guys in the AirDAO ecosystem. It's something that we see as well. So it's definitely worthwhile speaking about. So in essence, as you mentioned, the Modus platform allows its members to access development projects by investing in USDC. And their return will come back to them, their principal and return in USDC. So it's quite a simple operation. It's a simple model. It's almost a funding platform for Modus members to access those projects, and then the developer benefits, and they do. Now, you've then got, as we call it, right, the Modus token, wonder why, or our community Modus. You've got the Modus token. What that does, as you mentioned, is a utility token. That token is to provide access to the platform. So for the time being, because we haven't introduced that token, what we're doing is we're reducing all of the the barriers, if you will, for our early investors to invest. So we haven't introduced a token. We want them to familiarize themselves with the platform, with the projects on it, and the process of investing USDC, and so staking it and getting your return. What we will do, as you've mentioned there, is we'll introduce the Modus token later this year. We look on track to do that by September this year. And what the Modus token will require is, in essence, all users of the platform will have to own Modus tokens in order to access those opportunities, to stake their USDC into those opportunities. So the token itself is finite in supply. There's 1 billion tokens minted, no more, no less. And in essence, the purpose of that is you get some form of community feel and community incentive. So the more users that want to invest in projects because they realize the value, the more Modus tokens they have to own. So it's done on a sort of fair allocation tier system. So if I want to invest 1,000 USDC, I may need 450 Modus tokens. 10,000 USDC, I may need more Modus tokens. That's the way it's structured. So really, its sole purpose is, as I mentioned, to access those developments themselves. It gives some form of voting rights. So it allows guys who own the Modus tokens to signal governance over the running of the platform. You know, if you like the type of area that a last development project was in, or you want a certain type of development to come onto the platform in due course, you get the chance to vote and have your say using that signal governance mechanism. And another benefit is it's ultimately the way in which the platform itself will monetize itself. So every time, I suppose the number one question often is, how does the platform generate money, right? Well, Modus itself is trying to, or in the process of shifting over to a DAO structure. And in essence, what that will mean is all of the fees, we charge fees, listing fees to property developers in order to provide them this service. And once we transition over to a DAO structure, those fees will be used to buy back and burn Modus tokens. So in essence, what that will do is incorporate those fees into some form of utility token, which we will be structured as a DAO, so for all of our DAO members. So really, that token is going to be massive. It's going to be representative of the demand worldwide for our platform for a product that hasn't been done before. And we see it being hugely, hugely valuable in the future. But again, it's something we don't want to rush, as with our ethos. We're doing it carefully. But it's definitely something that's super, super exciting. And obviously, I would always say that all the guys in the AirDAO ecosystem, that's why we opened up our reward tiers that we introduced today. They're going to have, I suppose, the first bite of the cherry, if you will, at that token.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that it's not very often that you see an ecosystem where from day one there is clear demand for the utility token in the network itself. And that's something that even the AirDAO ecosystem has had to grapple with over the years. So I think it's commendable that from day one, users will need the token in order to engage with the property investments, but also for those who are going to be rewarded, they will also have to have skin in the game in order to receive those rewards. So it looks super, super healthy in that regard. Elliot, I think we should probably wrap it up a little bit. So as I said, today's the 5th. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we're expecting the platform to go live for people to have a look, understand KYC at some point next week, and with the first RWA to go live in the coming days.
Yeah, correct. So, I mean, we're Friday today. We're not going to push it over the weekend, but yeah, next week we're looking for it to launch, go live, first development to be loaded on there. And I would say to anyone watching this, if you are interested, I would advise that you KYC as soon as possible. And that you make sure you get your allocation as soon as possible, because once it's done, at least for our first project. You know, we haven't introduced the Modus membership tiers as of yet. So there is no sort of fair mechanism of allocation. It's done on a first come, first served basis. So if you guys are interested, I would advise reach out to anyone in the team. We're all here. Reach out to Michael, anyone in the AirDAO ecosystem. And yeah, try and be quick off the mark.
No, good stuff. Well, good luck with it all. Good luck over the next couple of weeks. And yeah, let's see where we go.
Yeah, exciting. Thank you.
Cheers, Elliot. Bye.